Hello, my friends. Hey, this is Paul again, and today we are reviewing the last book in the Lightbringer series. It is called The Burning White by Brent. I'm just going to give an overview of my thoughts, and then after that, I'm going to do some spoilers of the final book for people that have read the entire series. You'll know when the spoilers happen because the camera will change and I'll be sitting down with the word spoilers on the screen as well. So this is published by Orbit Books in 2019, and it is 913 pages of actual text for the book. Then there's acknowledgments and a glossary in the back, but 913 pages. So this is a whopper of a book. This entire series is a whopper of a series. I think it's like 1.5 million words. So I am so excited that I have finally finished this series, and this last book just did not let me down. It was everything that I wanted it to be. The book before this was a little bit of a letdown because not a whole lot happened, but a lot of things were set up for this final book. And so as all the threads of this series are coming together, all the characters are learning all the secrets of all the other characters, it's just so amazing to see everyone's reaction to like who is betraying them or who did what or who's been involved from the very beginning. And I just loved it so much. Brent writes with a pacing that I absolutely adore. Very fast chapters. At the end of each chapter, there will be a hook to get you to keep reading. And there are so many plot twists and changes in plot and unexpected happenings that it reads like a thriller book, but it's epic fantasy. And that is the entire series. So if that sounds interesting to you, a epic fantasy series that feels like a thriller with very short chapters with incredibly fast pacing, I would check out this series. However, there are some flaws in this series. The big one being that Brent handles sex and the attraction of the opposite sex in almost immature ways. And I'm hoping that in later books that he writes, he kind of tones that down a little bit because it feels like fan servicing to a demographic of young men that would read his books. And I think he is alienating a very large source of fandom with women by writing sex and gender relations in that way. I understand that a lot of his characters are younger and have immature thoughts, but at times it's just kind of grating. And it's not that, doesn't look that good for Mr. Weeks. Also, there are some walls in this series where not a whole lot happens in some of the books for long stretches of pages, but he is building this world, building these characters. What really surprised me about this series is how much of the political intrigue was a part of it and how well written the political intrigue of this series was. Yes, there is amazing magic. Yes, there are these big epic fights, but it's the political intrigue, the way that the characters were manipulating other characters that really made this book fantastic. And that's why Andros Guile is one of my favorite characters in fantasy literature now. And I have to give it to Brent Weeks. He is able to write these gray, morally bad maybe characters and gave them redemption arcs or just let people accept them for who they are, which I really appreciated with these books. It really showed that you can accept people for their differences, even if they might be horrible. And I just like that. There were only 2 or 3, what I would say, clearly defined evil characters, and they get what they deserve. But a lot of the other characters who you think might be evil, who are killing people, who are doing selfish things, they have good reasons, they have redemption arcs, they have motivations outside of just being pure evil, and I appreciated that. So I really liked this series. I loved this last book. It had me crying, it had me laughing, it had me whooping for joy. Definitely a 5-star book closing out this series. Now, if you want to hear my thoughts on some spoilers, on some things that are interesting to me, stay with the video. However, if you want to read this series and you don't want to be spoiled, I would click off now, okay? Okay, let's get to the spoilers. And I am back, so let's get to some of the spoilers of this series and my reaction to them. First off being Grimwoody. Grimwoody becoming the old man from the sand, I believe it is. Being in charge of the order was one of the best decisions I think that Weeks could have made in this series. It just made everything so interesting to know that the leader of this assassin organization was working next to Androskyle the entire time. So speaking of Androskyle, finding out that he killed his young son, Sebastian, with the blinding knife was one of those revelations that made everything make sense. Like all of his interactions, all of his motivations, his belief that he was the light bringer for so many years, that revelation just opened up his character so much, and it was great. It was fantastic. Dazen finding that out was fantastic and heartbreaking, because for so long he thought that he was the brother that no one wanted, but he was actually the one that they chose. Okay, so let's get to Tia. Tia killed so many people and so many innocent slaves, all to bring down the order. And I loved her character. I loved her arc. Those chapters with her sneaking around invisible, using peril to kill people, to assassinate people, they were some of the best in this series, and I loved it. What's that say about me that I loved reading about a little girl killing a bunch of people? And her arc to the end, where she harms her sight and she tries to sacrifice herself, I thought that was great, and it was so rewarding. Karis, her devotion and her love to everyone, phenomenal, fantastic. I loved her arc as well. Her story of being the last in her family and overcoming and coming to Chromaria, becoming a black card. And then we learned that she was actually going not to become a black card, but the other black cards stood up for her and wanted her in their squad. Speaking of squads, the Mighty. Oh, wow. Winston, Cruxer. Oh, Cruxer dying against Iron Fist. One of the highlights of the entire book. Oh, that was such an amazing scene. That was so well written. They got for Cutie, Big Leo. I just love the Mighty and how they talked to each other and how they had fun with each other. So Kip, Kip is the main, I would say he's the main character in this story. I mean, Dazen / Guile definitely is up there with him, but Kip's arc from a fat, insecure boy to this man that loves his comrades and his friends and his even some of his enemies, to the point where he just wants peace basically in the world. I thought it was great. I really did not like the arc with him and Tysus in the 4th book. However, in the 5th book, they won me over. Tysus is not as bad as I thought, and she was actually making some amazing diplomacy and administration choices for Kip, and that was great. Yes, in the fifth book, I thought maybe it was a little preachy. I don't know if Brent Weeks is a Christian, but there was a lot of Christian allegory in this book. And as a Christian myself, I didn't really mind that much, but at the same time, uh, with all that he wrote that I didn't care about with like the sexual things, having those Christian allegories in there wasn't, I don't know, it was weird. And this is just a great book. I love the ending. I thought that not lingering on the death of Kaios and lingering on the death of Simon was a great choice, because we're focusing on these characters that we love. And it was happened so quickly that Kaios died. And then all of the Banes getting killed. I didn't really understand Liv's character arc too much. That was the one where I didn't really understand it all the way. And I think I didn't really appreciate all of the immortal things that were going on, especially with that epilogue with Rhea and Kip, and learning that Orholam was with him when he was in the closet and she was helping too. I think if I ever reread this series, which I doubt I will, but if I ever did, I would pay more attention to the immortals and more attention to the evil immortals as well. I loved this series. This book was so much fun. I had such a fun time reading this, listening to it. So those are my spoiler thoughts on the book, and I will talk to you all next time. If you've read this, let me know in the comments. Thanks.